to Weekly World News on Spring Nectar TV, brought to you by Vibha, Ramesh, Los Angeles, United States. Sponsored by Sri Venkateswara Grocery and Kitchen, Pleasanton, California. First, the top headlines. Record tornadoes across states. Kentucky worst hit. Death toll on the rise. Booster shot to increase protection against Omicron, says a UK study. Parliament recommends the assessment of booster COVID shot in India. Norway and Denmark adopt stringent restrictions. Russia warned of dire consequences if it invades Ukraine. Moving on to news in detail. Friday night was a nightmare for several residents as killer tornadoes struck 8 states while leaving a far-damaging impact in Kentucky. According to sources, powerful twisters whirled through Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky, with the latter bearing the most severe brunt. Authorities are still assessing the damages and tallying the death and missing numbers. The governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, said on CNN, "I know we've lost more than 80 Kentuckians. That number is going to exceed more than 100. This is the deadliest tornado event we have ever had. I've got towns that are gone, that are just, gone," he said. What we know as of now is that at least 90 people have died and over 100 are still unaccounted for. Rescue operations are in progress as crews examine the ruins across states. News has it that the death toll is expected to go up. We'll keep you posted on this as it unfolds. And news on the Capitol attack of January 6th has it that Mark Meadows has been recommended for criminal prosecution by the investigating committee. To that effect, Benny Thompson, the chair of the Select Committee, stated that it comes down to this. Mr. Meadows started by doing the right thing, cooperating. He handed over records that he didn't try to shield behind some excuse. But in an investigation like ours, that's just a first step. When the records raise questions, as these most certainly do, you have to come in and answer those questions. And when it was time for him to follow the law, come in and testify on those questions, he changed his mind and told us to pound sand. He didn't even show up. The matter was with the full House of Representatives to vote for or against the citation. And the vote passed by a 222 to 218 margin, implying that Meadows be referred to probable criminal prosecution. Moving on, a UK study revealed that while 2 shots of a COVID vaccine may offer little protection against the newest variant, the booster jab is expected to raise the protection. To that effect, Dr. Hopkins at the UK Health Security Agency stated that "I think what we're seeing is that if you've had 2 doses more than 3 months ago, then it's not going to prevent you from getting symptomatic disease." The findings showed that a booster or 3rd jab of Pfizer vaccine increased protection against symptomatic infection to 75%. These findings come at a time when the UK is recording a high number of positive cases on a 24-hour window, with 58,194 new cases recorded on Friday. The increasing number of positive cases has prompted the government to move the country from Level 3 to Level 4 alert. The move was made on Sunday as UK's chief medical officers remarked that the emergence of Omicron adds additional and rapidly increasing risk to the public and healthcare services. Early evidence shows that Omicron is spreading much faster than Delta and that vaccine protection against symptomatic disease from Omicron is reduced. Health authorities predict that at the rate at which the number of positive cases is rising, although led by the Delta variant as of now, hospitals may soon be admitting nearly 5,000 people a day. And in India, the Parliament has recommended that the Health Ministry and agencies concerned should collaborate and assess the need for a booster COVID shot. The recommendation comes in the light of the emergence of newer variants and the need to tackle all kinds of variants of the virus. To this end, the Parliament Committee said in a report, the committee would like to know whether any research has been conducted by the ICMR and other concerned institutions regarding the efficacy of the vaccines that are being given or administered in the country against various variants. The recommendation also included strengthening the infrastructure to address a possible third wave, which may target the unvaccinated population, especially children. Meanwhile, India gears up to celebrate its 72nd Republic Day as it plans to invite top leaders of Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan for the annual Republic Day parade. News has it that the government is still awaiting confirmation from the leaders of the invited countries before making the announcement. Meanwhile, two Scandinavian countries, namely Norway and Denmark, announced more stringent COVID protocols as the two nations battle a rapid spike in coronavirus infections. Although infections in both the countries are currently led by the Delta variant, both Denmark and Norway are recording alarming numbers of cases caused by the Omicron variant too. Subsequently, the two governments have reinstated stricter restrictions. Schools and colleges in Denmark were shut down last week, employees moved back to remote working, and nightlife came to a standstill. Norway has tightened its measures as it expects the Omicron variant to dominate the number of infections even before Christmas. Moving on, with humanitarian help from donor nations, Africa will soon have a fresh inventory of nearly 1 billion doses of COVID vaccine. However, a larger issue looms in the form of shortage of syringes and other equipment required to deliver the vaccines. Experts fear that this may lead to a giving away of vaccines so as not to hoard them. Current stats show that only 7.5% of the African population is vaccinated against COVID-19. According to Dr. Richard Mihigo, a World Health Organization program coordinator, the first doses arrived in Ghana in March, and there were a lot of promises from COVAX that countries would receive their allocations. But that delivery was stopped when India halted delivery from the Serum Institute in the midst of its own outbreak earlier this year. That start was not ideal. Since then, however, the situation has stabilized. Now, the prospects through March 2022 look very good with almost 1 billion doses forecast to arrive, which in theory could cover 70% of the African population. Meanwhile, foreign ministers of G7 have warned Russia of massive consequences in the event of Russia invading Ukraine. Consequently, they've asked Russia to withdraw its force from the border. Further, a statement from the meeting of G7 countries read that any use of force to change borders is strictly prohibited under international law. Russia should be in no doubt that further military aggression against Ukraine would have massive consequences and severe cost in response. Further, the UK Foreign Secretary too announced the issuance of all types of economic sanctions against Russia if the latter doesn't pay heed to the warnings and proceeds to invade Ukraine. That said, the economic sanctions would encompass restricted access to global finance markets and cancellation of Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline to Germany, among others. Over to Austria, lockdown restrictions for the vaccinated population were lifted after 3 whole weeks. The move was made following the observation that new cases of coronavirus in the country came down by a big margin, allowing for some scope to returning to normal life. Although region-wise rules may exist, the government gave the green light to open museums, theaters, and other entertainment venues with effect from Sunday, and shops and retail outlets from Monday. That said, an 11 p.m. curfew will be in place for restaurants and compulsory mask wearing inside stores and public transport and public spaces. The unvaccinated public, though, will continue to follow the lockdown restrictions and be allowed to go out only for essential runs like grocery shopping, exercising, and visiting the doctor. Moving on, in a devastating accident in Haiti, over 60 people have lost their lives. According to sources, a fuel tanker carrying around 9,000 gallons of fuel exploded in Cap Haitien around midnight. The explosion burned everything in a 100-yard radius. The actual material damage and death toll are yet to be assessed as rescue operations are underway. Hospitals are overwhelmed with patients, as the mayor Pierre Rivros put it. We need human resources and also material resources, namely gauze, serum, and anything that can be used in case of serious burns. The government had announced a 3-day mourning for the dead. And that brings us to this week's Did You Know? Did you know that a man got killed by a falling cow? Rare but true. The incident happened in Brazil, where a grazing cow walked on the asbestos roof of a house and fell through it, killing João Maria de Souza. This happened in 2013. Incidentally, both he and his wife were sleeping on the same bed. However, the cow that fell through the roof landed on the man's side of the bed. Although de Souza was immediately taken to the hospital, relatives said that he did not get immediate treatment and eventually died due to internal bleeding. Talk about destiny. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's news report, sponsored by Sri Venkateswara Grocery and Kitchen, Pleasanton, California. I'll see you again next week with more world news on Spring Nectar TV. Stay safe.